Hello, my name is Bert Delisle, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that was inspired by Mike Peace's videos, where he made a little miniature lantern with a tea light in it. It has 4 holes on it, and a tea light fits in the bottom, and it's a nice little tree ornament. When I first made a couple of these, I looked at the amount of light coming out of all 4 sides, and I was also looking for a place to put my logo on. If I'm going to make these, I'd like to be able to sign them somewhere. And so what I came up with was my version of this little lantern is like this. It has only 3 sides, which allows me to put my logo on. And in addition to that, is that with only 3 sides now, you can see that the light is reflecting off of that 4th side, which projects light back into the room. So when you mount this on a Christmas tree, if it's mounted on the tree with this this section back against the tree, you actually end up with more light coming out into the room. And so on my design, I'm going to do 3-sided. And one of the interesting things I found as well is that when you're making the holes with a 4-sided one, you have to really be careful to make sure that it's centered so this little support is the same width as this one. And on this particular one, you can see there is a bit of a difference. However, I've come up with a novel way of marking out the blanks so that they come out a little bit more accurate on this and this, so they're not quite as noticeable. And in addition to that, I also found out that I could use odd shaped pieces of wood. It doesn't have to be perfectly square in order to do the process that I'm doing. So without further ado, I'll just explain the process. I started by making a drawing, and so I made a sketch, and it's a to scale sketch. Everything on here is in millimeters because it's easier for me to use millimeters than fractions. And I measured it out. Some of these measurements, like for the tea light, I've got 36 millimeters, but that just happened to be the size of the tea light I got. So tea lights come in various sizes, so that number would be adjusted based on the tea light that I have. So I made a scale drawing of the lantern. And then beside it here, I've got the steps that I would do when I'm making it. I had to write them down so that I wouldn't forget when I got in the shop. And then to turn the top detail, I made a small jam chuck that actually fits in the bore. So once I turn all of the outside of this lantern to satisfaction, I can take it off the lathe, put it on this little mandrel, and then finish turning the top. And then to put in the bail, I use number 12 wire, and I'll show that when I get to the shop. I cut a section of number 12 wire, bend it around a 1/2-inch bolt, and I leave the legs long, and then I decide how long I want the lantern bail to be based on how big the little ball is at the top. And I'll show that when we get up to the shop. More importantly, to take a piece of wood that is not perfectly square, it's a bit of a challenge to find out where to put the holes, or to drill the holes. So what I've done with this particular one is I took a rough measurement across here, and this particular one is 50 millimeters. So then I measured 50 millimeters on here, and this measurement really doesn't matter other than to check to make sure that you've got 50 millimeters. More importantly, you take 25 millimeters to the center point, and from this reference side 25 millimeters, and from the same reference side 25 millimeters. And in order to do that without having to measure each one, I've got this little sliding tool here that has a lock nut on it, so you can slide this back and forth, and I set this edge to 25 millimeters. And then the interesting thing about it is that if it's at 24 or 25, it really doesn't matter, because once this is set, it will be the same. And what I do is I put it on the reference side, set it on here, take my pencil, and put a mark on here. And I do the same on the same reference side, put a mark on here. And from the same reference side, I put a mark on here. Now I know with these marks, all three of these punch marks are going to be in exactly the same plane. The next thing to do is to decide which side here is a reference side and put another mark. And to check that, go around to the other side. And you'll see that the mark is actually perfectly centered and I didn't have to measure anything. So I know that all three of these lines and this center line here are the same distance from this reference point, from this reference side. And we do the same on the bottom. We make a mark across here, then we go from here, and we go across to the other side just to verify, and you'll notice there that that's perfectly centered. So then I take a center punch, mark all of these with a center punch, and when I go to the drill press, the Forstner bit will find center on these punch marks, and we can drill the holes. And because I'm only drilling 3, I don't have to worry about the fourth one, but I don't have to worry about making this particular block perfectly square. Once it's between centers, we turn it round, and that deals with getting rid of this extra material on here, so we have it turned around. And these 3 holes will be properly positioned. One thing I should note too is that on this particular piece of wood, if it doesn't happen to be perfectly square on one end, not really a problem. You don't have to cut it square, but you have to put a ruler or take a small square device and put a line across the bottom so that you've got a reference point from here to the center of this hole, and the center of this hole, and the center of this hole, so that these 3 holes are the same distance from this line. Once this is in the chuck, or once this is on the lathe between centers, we're going to square this off. We'll take a parting tool and go down and square this off. So now this end will be the bottom end of the lantern, and it'll be perpendicular to the center line. On this end of which will be the top of the blank, we're going to put a dovetail or put a chucking mechanism. On my jaws they have dovetail jaws, so I'll put a dovetail spigot on there. If you have straight jaws, well, you put a straight spigot on, and that's how you mount them. When I get to the shop, we'll show you that. And what I normally do is I'll have a series of blocks where I'll put this between centers, straighten this edge, put the tenon on, take it off, take the next block, and do the same thing. And if I'm making one lantern, I generally make more than one at a time. So I'll make 3 or 4. Here I've got 4 blocks. So when I go out to the shop, I'm going to make 4 lanterns. And I do each step along the way, so I don't have to change tools as often. Anyway, with that brief overview of what we're going to build, I'll come back when we're out at the shop and we'll start turning some wood, making some shavings. Okay, so I'm back in the shop and I've got a few blocks here. They've been roughed out or marked out, and we're ready to go to the drill press and we'll drill the 3 side holes. Because this piece of wood has got an oblong end on it, we'll have to hold it in a set of wooden clamps here, and I'll show you that here. So I've just got a set of wooden clamps here, and I can line up the drill press. I've got a foot pedal. I've got a foot pedal on it, so I don't have to turn the switch on and off. Okay, so we drill in about a little better than an inch. So we'll loosen this off, replace it with the next block. And this will put the hole in nice and straight. Line it up on the little divot.
go, 3 holes. Now I'll go ahead and I'll drill out. I've got a bunch of blanks made, so I'll go ahead and drill all the rest of these blanks, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to turn them. Okay, so we're back. We've got a bunch of blocks that have been drilled, 3 sides, and they're center marked on each end. Now we'll put them in the between centers, and the first thing we'll do between centers is we'll mark off this line that we squared off, so we know where the bottom of the lantern is going to be, perfectly square, and then on the other end we'll put a tenon. So as I've said before, we put a reference line so we know where the bottom of the lantern is going to be, and from this line to the center of the hole, according to the drawing, is 36 millimeters, and that's a 25 millimeter hole, or 1 inch. So we'll line this up on here. And by doing the previous marking with that marking tool, this hole and this center are on the same plane, and this hole is on the same center line as well. Even though this block is wider here than it is here, it doesn't really matter because we're going to turn it round anyhow. So the only critical thing to here is to make sure that that you can turn the lathes without banging your tool rest. And we'll take a spindle roughing gouge and a face shield, and we'll make this round. So we'll start off slow and we'll bring up the speed. I like to turn around 1500 to 2000. So I can still see my mark there. I'm going to use a parting tool and actually part that off nice and level. And then I'll put a tenon on one end. And so that's good enough for roughing it round. We'll do that to all of the other blocks. I guess we're back now. We've got all of these roughed out to round, and we've got a tenon on one end, and we still have a center point on the other end, so that's on center. We'll mount this in a chuck, then we'll drill the space for the T-light, and then we'll bore the center portion out, and then we'll finish shaping the outside. Okay, so now we're back. We've got all of the blanks roughed out. We can put them in a chuck. And I like to run the tailstock up just to make sure that everything is centered before I tighten the jaws up really tight. That means that I maintain the center line as much as I possibly can. And we tighten that up. And now we can go ahead and drill for the T-light. And for the T-lights that I bought, they're 36 millimeter, or in a pinch you can use 1 7/16, which is almost the same. Both of those will make a hole that's slightly larger than the T-light, which is not an issue because you can take the T-light and put a little bit of hot glue on it, and that'll fill up the little bit of the gap around and makes it easy to put it in. So I'll slow the lathe down, and we'll fire it up, and we'll drill. It's about 18 millimeters, and I found that by drilling a couple millimeters past the thickness of the bit is adequate for the T-light. And then what I like to do, because I like to make, I don't like to change the bits as much, it's easier to take the piece out of the headstock and put another piece in. They're close enough to almost perfect circle that they actually line up pretty good. So that's what I've been doing. Sorry about the squeal, but that's the way it goes with these things. And again, because I like to do these in a batch process, I drilled all of the blanks with the side holes, and now I'm drilling all of the blanks with the 36 millimeter bit. Doing it this way means that if I'm only making one, I'd have to change the bits and stop and do each step separately. But if I've got a bunch of blanks, I can do all of the same steps at the same time. Another advantage to having more than one blank ready is that if perhaps something doesn't go right and the piece of wood breaks, if you're only making one, then you have to start all over and do the whole process from square one. Or if you've got a bunch of blanks and you're doing each step, if one of them fails, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so all of those are drilled at 36 millimeter. And now I'll switch the bits and go with a 32 millimeter. And 32 millimeter is roughly 1.25 inches. And the reason I like to go with a smaller bit rather than drilling all the way through with the big bit is that it gives you a little bit of a shoulder, so when you put the T-light in, you've got some place for the T-light to register against. And one of the nice things about drilling it this way is that you can actually see your drill bit. And I like to take it up about 2 or 3 millimeters past the top of the hole. On some of my early lanterns, I drilled an 1 1/16 hole through here, and I put a mirror in the top. But I found since I've gone to the 3-window design, there's enough of a reflection off the back wall that it gives me enough light. If you have 4 holes, they still look nice if you're sitting on a table, but if they're on a tree, you don't have quite as much light showing out into the room. But with the 3 holes and the solid wall being against the tree, you get a lot more light. Anyway, that's my spin on the lanterns. I know everybody can make their own, put their own spin on it, but that's my spin. Okay, so that's the inside drilled. So we're done with the drill chuck. So now I built a little jam chuck that I can use to hold the lanterns on this inside bore. I can line it up with my tailstock. And that's a little bit tight, so I don't want to bust it, so I'll take it off and modify the jam chuck ever so slightly. There we go. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to mark off where we're going to make some of the details. So some of the details is going to be a little bit of a bead down here, then a little bit of space. I like to come back about 1/8 of an inch or 2 or 3 millimeters from the holes. And then I'll take this material down, make a bead here. Then I like to put a mark up here above the holes, and that'll be the start of the lid. And then we'll end up taking this down and making the little ball, and then we'll drill a hole through here for the bale wire, and then that part of the turning will be done. And I like to use a skew, so I'm going to use a skew to do the turning on this. I'm going to raise my tool rest up a little. And we'll see what kind of a catch I had there. Oops, looks like I got a pretty severe catch, although I've got lots of material so I can take it down quite a bit more. I should be able to recover. We have a little bit of a flat spot still here, so we can still take a lot down. We've got lots of material. Okay, so at this point I'd like to find out where the backside is, and I want to make sure I drill the hole parallel with this backside, so when it hangs on the tree, the bale will be hanging over the branches and this window will be front and center. So I want to make sure I drill the hole in line with these two side holes so that the bale goes in parallel to the back wall. I like to drill the hole now rather than later because as you'll see when I come out on the other side there's some blowout. But by turning it now I'm going to be turning a little bit more of the shape on there, so it'll be fine. And I'll clean up this little bit of a bead here. I think I'll put a burn line on each side of these and maybe even one here. And then a little bit of sanding and it'll be a finished project. So I also like to put a little bit of a detail on the top end if I can. So I've got a decorating elf here. Slow the speed down to about 500 or 600 RPM, and then hold this on a bit of an angle and just push it in. A little bit of a burnish with a natural bristle brush. And take a point tool and just define the detail. Don't know if you'll be able to see that detail on there, but when I take it off the lathe I'll hold it up to the camera a little bit. And I noticed that I got one of these holes a little bit lower than the other. So I must have been a little bit inaccurate when I drilled the holes. But most of the time people won't notice that, so it is what it is. It's a Christmas ornament. A little bit of a little bit of sanding now, and we'll be off to the races. So and then I'll just put this up there just ever so slightly to hold a little bit for just that little bit of sanding that I need to do. Start with 120. $180, a little bit of 220, now at this stage I could actually finish it on the lathe. I could put equal parts of ethanol, boiled linseed oil, and shellac. So it's a third, a third, a third. Slow the lathe way down. And just put a little bit on and hold it on. Okay, so there's one lantern done. Now the next thing is to put the bail on. So which camera are we on? Okay, so on this camera here we can see that when I drilled the holes in the cross holes, I must have missed my mark on the vertical line, but the thickness of this and the thickness of this isn't so bad, and this is a wide angle back wall, so that's not a problem. I've got the little bail hole here, sized for a number 12 piece of copper wire. I made a bunch of these bails up a little bit earlier. They're just a piece of copper wire. I bend it around a 1/2 inch bolt to get the nice round shape on here. I kind of size it so that when the bail is hanging, you can actually hang it on a tree. And in order to put the bail on, you just open it up a little bit, get one of the holes started in, and the hole is almost size on size for number 12. And I normally use a pair of pliers. Roughly, I can't remember what the drill bit is, I think it's a 2mm, but I just squeeze the bail onto the wire, and if I need to straighten it a little bit, and you can shape it a little, this will still move a little, but you can hang it on a tree and the tea light will fit. So basically with the lantern, you've got a hole in there deep enough for the lantern to fit in, so it can sit on a table without protruding. Turn the lantern on, and this particular one is it's called a cool white, so it's kind of a whiter light as opposed to this one, which is called a warm white. So it has a little bit of a yellow, and some people like the yellow ones and some people like the white ones. So I've got both. They both look good once they're on a tree. These particular lights are timed tea lights, so when you put them on, they will stay on for 6 hours and then shut off for 18. So every 24 hours they're only on for 6 hours, which means if you have it hanging on a tree, you turn it on at 4 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock at night it'll turn itself off. The next day it'll turn itself on at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whenever you've turned them on, and they'll stay on for 6 hours. So you don't have to turn the light off to save your battery, and they'll last for a couple of weeks easily if in a time situation. And that's about it. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.